Okay, can you explain collaring a little bit for people who don't know?
Well, collaring means something different to everyone, I would say.
Mhm.
But a lot of times a dominant, if it gets to this level of the relationship, like a dominant will collar a submissive. They all look different and they can all mean different things to everyone. But basically, it's kind of like, some people look at it as like kinky engagement. It's like a commitment. You know, like instead of a ring on your finger, you've got a collar around your neck. It's kinky, right?
Yeah.
A collar it's an honor.
It is, yeah.
I want my future partner to collar me.
Okay, so I want to chat a little bit about polyamory.
Sure.
Because Niki, you're actually married.
Mm-hmm.
And so how does that play into your dynamic? If you want to share a little bit about like what your husband enjoys and where he fits into this whole world of kink with you.
So, I mean, that's actually one of the nice things about like being non-monogamous is that like he's super vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'll tell him, you know, about like the things that I explore with my doms and whatnot. And he'll be like so happy for me. And he'll be like, love that you got to explore that. But for him, he'd be like, it's not for me. And I'm like, it's totally fine. But yeah, we've been together 9 years, married 6, almost 7. And then we've been non-monogamous for about 4.5 years. It basically just kind of started out as like, we were both traveling a lot. And just when we were away, we wanted to, you know, be able to like have some fun if we wanted to. Took a little bit of a COVID break. I think everyone did. And
Yeah.
he was home all the time. So we were just banging each other. But then we reopened, you know, I would say last year, early on in the year. And that's kind of like when I started exploring my kinky side a little bit more and I met my doms and everything. And so it was nice to be able to like explore something that I knew he wasn't into and like still have that. And like he really did support me, or like he still, you know, does support me in it. But like he loved hearing all the stories when I'd come home and tell him and everything. So that was like a really nice kind of, you know, a showcase of like what non-monogamy can be. Because, you know, if something's not for someone, like don't force it. Like I didn't want him to. You know, every once in a while, like he'd kind of try a little bit of something here and there, but it just really wasn't him. And so, you know, I just appreciated that he still supported me in exploring it on my own. And yeah, that's kind of how we go about it.
That's the beauty of, you know, polyamory is like, I'm such a huge, you know, I mean, obviously I don't think polyamory is for everybody. So I wouldn't call myself like an advocate for it, but I don't believe that you should be trying to get your needs met from one person.
I agree.
Because like, even if it's possible, like if you meet this person and they can like fulfill all your needs over time, that is so much pressure and becomes exhausting for both partners. And so being able to, you know, use all parts of yourself and like express yourself in all of these different ways with different relationships can be so fulfilling. And then you come back to your partner like in such a full place that you have so much to give in your, you know, in your primary partnership or your marriage or whatever that is. So
yeah, I would agree.
I just recorded an episode called The Danger of the One. And it's all about like how that happens, where we put so much pressure and so much, you know, of our time and energy and attention into one person, thinking that that's like going to make things great or better. And it actually a lot of times can be like a downfall of a relationship.
No, I agree. And I mean, I like, at least for me, I like that. That's what you titled that episode. And I've always had this, like the mindset, even like when I first met my husband, like when I met him, I was like, okay, we're going to get married one day. And we did. But I just remember like, even then I was like, he's not going to like fulfill everything for me. There are things that I need to fulfill for myself. You know, I think people forget that too. Like you can make yourself happy. Like don't put all of that on your partner. And then, yeah, you can have friendships and other partnerships that also fulfill you. I remember even from a young age, always looking at relationships. I think this comes from like watching mom and dad's marriage. Maybe they put so much pressure on each other to always like, you know, if they're not doing something, you know, the way that I want them to, that doesn't make me happy. And then I remember looking at that and I was like, well, you can't put all your happiness in someone else's hands. You're never going to be happy if that's the case.
See, I feel like we learned this a little differently.
Really?
A little bit, because I always put the pressure on myself, especially in college. I went into college. I had just gotten out of a relationship. Niki met her husband and all my friends were getting married. And then all of a sudden I was putting pressure on me. I was like, oh my God, I need to find the one. I need to find the guy that's going to make me happy forever and ever and ever. I need to find this person. They're going to fulfill this, this, and this. And it took me so long to realize that high expectation was just sabotaging everything for me. And I found a great partner. We were together for 4 years. And then as soon as I accepted, the reason we broke up was because I wanted to move here. Turns out he didn't. And then he cheated on me. I forgave him. And then we tried to make it work and it didn't. But as soon as I let it go and I looked back and I was like, was marriage really what I wanted right then and there? Was I just trying to fulfill something from my past that I had put so much pressure on myself for? So as soon as that happened and I really started to like restructure the way I looked at relationships, the way I looked at the relationship with myself, that's when I was like, there's so much work to be done here. And that's kind of why I started therapy.
Yes, good for you.
Thank you. But also, just starting the podcast with Niki and, being an ally of the poly crowd and, beginning to see how I define relationships for myself. I think I've come to the realization that I would like to have a partner where we eventually reach sexual non-monogamy. I like the emotional intimacy with one person romantically, generally because I have a great relationship with someone else that's, non-romantic where they're like my soulmate. I also have another best friend who I get a lot of emotional love and what I need fulfilled by them, that I want my romantic partner. Also the emotional monogamy, but when it comes to like sexual stuff and opening ourselves up to like allowing other people to play and make friendships with, I think I do want that at one point. I haven't found that yet, but I will.
Cool. Well, I want that for you too, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, and I'm like really glad that we got back to this point because you said like right now I'm focusing on my relationship with myself. What does that mean to you? What does it look like? Because I think so many people listening are like know that that's really where the work is, but they don't know what to do a lot of times. And it looks different for everybody, but like what's your process? Like, are you like dating yourself?
Funny you say that because there's this one influencer I've been following and she actually just started dating herself. And I've seen her post about this so much and I just kind of feel called to do that. But for me, I didn't really give myself time to heal correctly from the time I transitioned from being engaged to breaking up to having my hoe phase 2.0, which I very much enjoy.
Hoe phase 2.0. I love that.
To trying to get back into another relationship. There was a point where I looked back and I was like, wow, I really messed that up. But that's okay. One thing that I really learned last year was I was finally able to start looking at things and patterns, realizing them, and then, beginning the work. Now, of course, that's not a perfect picture every time. It takes a lot of trial and error. But I think with working on myself, I've become way more like into my, astrological journey and my spiritual journey, which has actually like taken, once I kind of let go of, what was it, like institutionalized religion. Once I did that, my panic attacks actually went away.
Wow.
Funny enough. And then just as soon as I started embracing more of my spirituality, that's when I was like, okay, well.
You journal a lot more too now.
Yes. That's when I started other practices. For one, journaling. I started, writing down my manifestations, writing down my feelings, writing down
gratitude,
what I wanted to accomplish in this amount of time. And I would always like try to correlate it with like, what's going on with the planets. Recently, I also began, meditating every morning.
Yes.
So I wake up, I, take care of my fur babies, and then I make a cup of coffee and I start my meditation. I usually try to finish my coffee before meditating.
Finish your coffee before meditating? That's like,
well, because
I love it. You're like, let me get this caffeine so I can get super zen.
Right.
Well, okay. I try to do mine the opposite, but I like, let me hear this out.
I like to chug a full thing of water and then have my coffee. And then I'm like, okay, ready to meditate. But I think for me, healing has begun with realizing what I like to do, for myself throughout the day. And I know I like to journal. I know I like to meditate. I know I like to work out and walk my dogs. It's like, it's getting into your own routine. It's, take an audit of the things that you've done day to day and be like, okay, well, what's not working and what is? Like I said, it's not a perfect picture. We all have our days, but I really do feel like now I'm to the point where I realize I need to be single. I need to be single. I need to work on myself. There are things that I want to fix, and then I'm going to be ready for a relationship. So, yeah. And I think everybody has to do that. At one point, you really have to sit down with yourself and think about what you want for you, what you want that picture to look like. We have a new moon.
We do. In Aquarius. It's Aquarius season.
So it's, you really have to start, thinking about, and that's one of the things we talk about, like, especially with Niki and her non-monogamous journey. And one of the things that we champion for is really sit down with yourself and realize how you want things in your life to look for yourself and how you're going to find that. So
despite what society says.
Despite what society tells
you. If you're right, monogamy or non-monogamy doesn't have to be for everyone, but like
make sure you make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, not just because like society tells you like you should marry one person and that's it. Like fuck what they say. Like figure it out for yourself.
I spent so long thinking I had to find this one person to fulfill everything for me because society was just like, oh, you want a wedding, ring by spring. You want that picket, 4 poster, whatever. House.
We get sold the dream.
Exactly.
It's not everyone's dream.
And it's like, no. And after ending my engagement, I was like, I don't know if I ever want to like actually like marry someone. Like I would love to have like a nice little ceremony. But I don't think I have to define it with
legal documents. Yeah. Don't bring the government into it.
So I don't know. I think I've really started my journey of self-healing this past, I don't know, I want to say maybe like 6 to 8 months.
It's incredible. Yeah. I thank you so much for sharing that because it's important to know yourself on such a deep level that you can have those awarenesses and, like we're talking about, fulfilling yourself first. And I think that putting yourself first is the most important thing you could do to actually prepare for a solid, like fulfilling partnership with anyone else. And yeah, you're very insightful too. I just love that you're like, I want to figure out what I want my day to even look like and become aware of my feelings so that I can be processing and then I'll worry about somebody else.
And it helps with kink, I would say. Like we know one of the switches that we interviewed, she collared herself. So she had her own journey with herself in which, she defined what kink meant for her and she collared herself.
Okay. Can you explain collaring a little bit for people who don't know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, collaring means something different to everyone, I would say. But a lot of times a dominant, if it gets to this level of the relationship, like a dominant will collar a submissive. For example, my 2 doms, he or she wears a collar every day that he placed on her. And so obviously like the collar can come off, like they look a variety of ways. Sometimes it's like a very simple metal ring. Hers is like a really cute pink leather.
I love her collar.
Yeah, with like a gold hook on it. They all look different and they can all mean different things to everyone. But basically it's kind of like, some people look at it as like kinky engagement. It's like a commitment. Like instead of a ring on your finger, you've got a collar around your neck. It's kinky, right?
Yeah.
And and so it's kind of like a level of commitment that like your dominant has like ownership of you. And so, and usually it's very like ritualistic, like when it can come off, like when it goes back on, the processes of like, like when you're wearing a leash, protocol and all that stuff. So it's just a way to define that commitment between a dominant and a submissive. So
it's very endearing for our vanilla people. Just know that a collar is an honor.
It is. Yeah. It really I would love to be able to like give someone the ability to collar me. Like not only like to give that to someone to be a big deal for me, but like it would also be a big deal like on the receiving end of like someone wanting to collar me as well.
I want my future partner to collar me. Like I really hope I manifest that for myself. Yeah.
ready to color.
Right?
Cami, she's here waiting.